Ukraine says 18 Russian tanks were hit in a single special operation. Ukraine says 18 Russian tanks were hit in a single special operation. A number like that is enough to draw attention, but the real weight lies in how those tanks were brought into the target zone. According to Ukrainian sources, aerial reconnaissance units had watched the movement routes of Russian armor for a long period of time. When tanks left their covered positions, entered familiar roads, and moved in a formation that could be observed, they were no longer only attack weapons. They became targets leaving a trail. On the Ukrainian battlefield, a tank can be seen before it fires a single shot. Its route can be recorded by UAVs. Its speed, stopping points, withdrawal direction, and supporting vehicles can all become data for an ambush. Behind the number 18, there is also a wider picture. Open-source data has recorded more than 3,000 Russian tanks, around 8,000 infantry fighting vehicles and armored vehicles, and about 1,000 artillery systems lost with visual evidence. For Moscow, the issue is not only how many vehicles were hit in one day. If tanks are hunted on the way in, ammunition depots are struck behind the line, recovery teams are watched while pulling damaged vehicles back, and factories are racing to replace losses, then Russian armor is under pressure across its entire combat life cycle. Is Ukraine simply destroying Russian tanks? Or is it attacking the whole system that allows those tanks to return to the front? Let's find out with military force. Ukraine's reported strike on 18 Russian tanks begins with a simple but important fact. The operation appears to have been built on patience, not chance. According to Ukrainian sources, the aerial reconnaissance team of Lasar's group, part of Ukraine's National Guard, spent a long period watching the routes used by Russian tanks before the ambush began. That detail matters because it shows how much the battlefield has changed. Armor is no longer judged only by its gun, its engine, or the thickness of its steel. It is also judged by whether it can move without being seen. The Ukrainian account says Commander Dominik's team helped identify the movement pattern of Russian armor. Then attack drones from Lasar's group worked with Ukrainian artillery to strike the targets. Ukraine says 18 Russian tanks were hit during the operation, although that number should be treated as a Ukrainian claim because it has not been fully confirmed by independent sources. The careful wording is important, but the military meaning remains clear. Ukraine is presenting the strike as a planned operation, not as a sudden battlefield accident. The structure of the attack carries the real lesson. First, reconnaissance drones watched the area and followed the routes that Russian armor was likely to use. Then, attack UAVs moved in when the vehicles were exposed. Artillery added heavier firepower when the targets were fixed in place, or when more strikes were needed. For Russia, that creates a serious tactical problem. A tank is designed to break lines, protect its crew, and bring heavy firepower forward. Yet those strengths are weakened when the route is known, before the vehicle reaches combat range. If a tank uses the same road, stops in the same area, or moves with the same support vehicles, it leaves a pattern. Once that pattern is read from above, speed can become less useful, and armor can become a shell around a target that has already been selected. This is why the reported operation matters beyond the headline number. In this kind of sequence, each weapon has a role, and the tank is not facing one threat at a time. It is moving through a layered system of observation, precision attack, and indirect fire. Heavy vehicles must now survive drones watching from the sky, artillery waiting for coordinates, operators studying movement habits, and ambush zones prepared before the first shot is fired. The reported strike should therefore be seen as a warning about armored movement itself. When a route becomes predictable, the vehicle using it can become vulnerable before battle begins. The same pattern becomes even clearer when the fighting shifts towards Sloviansk, where Ukraine is using drones and artillery not only against tanks, but against the wider Russian mechanized system. The Sloviansk direction shows that Ukraine's drone and artillery campaign is becoming a repeated battlefield method. not a single isolated strike. After the reported Lasars Group operation, Ukrainian unmanned units from the 81st Air Assault Brigade and the 7th Air Assault Corps announced another set of hits in the same wider pattern. They reported the destruction of 2 Russian tanks and an ammunition depot in the Sloviansk area. The number is smaller than the earlier tank claim, but its meaning is important because it points to continuity. Ukraine is trying to keep pressure on Russian armor after the first strike, before damaged units can be restored or replaced at the front. That turns the sector into more than a place of occasional losses. It becomes a test of whether Russian armored units can still move, reload, repair, and return under constant observation. Sloviansk matters because it sits inside a larger contest over movement, supply, and access to firing positions. A tank does not fight alone. It needs shells, fuel, repair crews, safe roads, nearby infantry, and command links. When Ukrainian drones search for targets in this sector, they are not watching only the armored vehicle at the front. They are also looking for the ammunition that feeds it, the route that carries it forward, and the support vehicles that keep it useful after combat damage. A depot hit can reduce the effect of several vehicles at once. If shells are delayed, tanks fire less often. If storage points are moved farther back, supply trucks must travel longer distances. If commanders fear that depots are being watched, they may split stocks into smaller sites, which can make delivery slower and harder to organize. For commanders, supply delays can matter as much as direct losses during a planned assault. Another layer is Russia's effort to recover damaged equipment after failed mechanized assaults. This detail is important because a tank that is disabled is not always a total loss. If it can be pulled back, mechanics may repair the engine, replace tracks, remove usable optics, or strip parts for another vehicle. In a long war, recovery has real value. It saves metal, weapons, engines, and time. It also reduces the need to send a completely new tank from a storage base or repair plant. Ukraine has a direct reason to attack this recovery process. A damaged tank left near the front can become a trap for the people sent to save it. Recovery vehicles must move slowly, often along exposed roads, and they may need to stop in areas that have already been mapped by drones. Repair teams, tow vehicles, and escort units can then become new targets. Each rescue attempt can expose another piece of the support chain, which is exactly what Ukrainian surveillance is designed to find. That is why the Sloviansk activity should be understood as a campaign against the Russian mechanized system, not just a count of burned vehicles. Ukraine is trying to stretch the cost of every failed assault. First, Russian armor enters the watched area. Then Ukrainian drones and artillery strike vehicles or nearby supply points. After that, recovery units may face the same surveillance and the same danger. The result is a longer cycle of loss, where damage in the first clash can continue to grow in the hours or days that follow. This pattern also changes the pressure on Russian commanders. To keep attacking near Sloviansk, they still need tanks, artillery, drones, infantry, and support vehicles in the area. Yet every added element creates more movement, more radio activity, more supply traffic, and more possible targets for Ukrainian drones. The more Russia tries to sustain pressure, the more visible its support system can become. That visibility leads directly into the next problem. A larger Russian attack system is harder to hide when Ukraine is watching the roads, depots, and recovery routes around it very closely. Russia's pressure around Sloviansk should be understood as a full attack system, not only as a series of armored moves. According to Ukrainian accounts, Russian forces are still bringing tanks, artillery, drones, and mechanized units into the area. Moscow has not accepted reported losses as a reason to slow down. It is still trying to keep Ukrainian defenders under pressure, force them to spend ammunition, and test where the line may be weaker. This method fits Russia's wider approach in eastern Ukraine. Tanks add shock and direct fire. Artillery tries to break positions and cut movement. Drones search for troops, vehicles, and supply routes. Mechanized groups help move soldiers forward when conditions allow. Russia is also using shelling and remote mining to pressure Ukrainian logistics. A defensive line can weaken even when the trench itself is not taken. If roads behind the front become dangerous, ammunition may arrive later. Fuel trucks may need longer routes. Evacuation vehicles may wait for safer windows. Troops moving between positions can face delays before reaching the fight. Remote mines deepen the problem because they can appear on roads that were safe only hours earlier. Yet this same pressure can expose the system behind the assault. Artillery batteries need firing positions and ammunition deliveries. Drone teams need launch areas, control points, and communication links. Tanks need routes that can carry heavy vehicles. Mechanized units need repair assets, fuel points, and assembly areas. None of these parts can operate in complete silence. They create movement, heat, radio traffic, vehicle tracks, and repeated patterns that aerial surveillance can study. This is where Ukraine's observation network becomes dangerous for Russian forces. A single tank may be harder to stop if it appears suddenly, but a support network is harder to hide. Supply trucks move along roads. Gun crews return to firing areas. Drone teams operate near antennas, shelters, or vehicles. Recovery crews wait near damaged equipment. The more Russia tries to sustain pressure, the more visible pieces it must place in the battle space. The weakness is not only that Russian vehicles can be struck. The deeper problem is that a mechanized attack depends on many actions happening in order. Ammunition must arrive before guns fire. Fuel must reach vehicles before they move. Drones must provide information before assault groups advance. Repair teams must keep enough equipment working for the next attempt. If Ukrainian surveillance interrupts even one link, the assault may lose speed. Around Sloviansk, this creates a contest between mass and visibility. Russia tries to bring enough firepower and machinery to keep pressure steady. Ukraine tries to make that machinery easier to detect, slower to move, and more expensive to use. The battle is therefore not limited to the moment when a drone hits a tank. It begins earlier when the system that supports that tank starts to move. A truck leaving a depot, a gun taking position, or a drone team setting up control equipment can all become part of the same target picture. In this environment, every added Russian asset may increase firepower, but it also increases the number of signs that Ukrainian drones can follow. Seen this way, Sloviansk is not only a local fight over roads and positions. It is part of a larger pattern of attrition, where Russian tanks, armored vehicles, artillery systems, and support assets are worn down across many sectors. The next step is to place these battlefield claims beside open-source loss records, because those records show how repeated local damage can grow into a wider equipment problem for Russia. That is the connection the next section must explain. War spotting gives this story a wider scale, because the reported 18 tank operation sits inside a larger record of Russian equipment losses. The open-source database has recorded more than 3,000 Russian tanks, around 8,000 infantry fighting vehicles and armored vehicles, and roughly 1,000 artillery systems lost with visual evidence. These figures do not describe one battle or one front. They show a long process of attrition across the war. The value of these records is their strict method. Open-source lists usually count a vehicle only when there is photo or video proof, or when public evidence is strong enough to classify the loss. That means the numbers should not be treated as the full scale of Russian damage. Some vehicles may burn where no drone records the scene. Others may be destroyed behind the line, hidden under tree cover, or abandoned in areas that never appear online. For that reason, visual data is best understood as a confirmed floor, not a ceiling. This distinction matters. When a database confirms thousands of losses, it shows only what can be seen and checked. The real total may be higher, but even the confirmed number is enough to show pressure on Russia's armored force. A single destroyed tank is a tactical loss. Thousands of destroyed or captured vehicles create an organizational problem. Russia must replace machines, train crews, move spare parts, repair old platforms, and keep enough armor near the front. That task becomes harder when losses occur across many sectors because repair plants, rail transport, storage bases, and training pipelines all face pressure at the same time. This is where the 18-tank claim gains a different meaning. By itself, it would not decide the war. Placed beside years of recorded armor losses, it becomes part of a repeated pattern. Each successful strike removes combat power, but it also creates new demands behind the front. A burned tank may mean a lost crew, gun, engine, and optics. Even when a vehicle can be repaired, it must be recovered, transported, inspected, and returned to service. The result is a constant race between loss and restoration. Russia may still have equipment in storage, but stored equipment is not the same as ready equipment. Cumulative losses also affect quality. A modern tank, a repaired tank, and an old vehicle pulled from reserve do not offer the same battlefield value. Some older platforms may need engine repairs, track replacement, radios, armor, or rebuilt fire control systems. Others may return with weaker sensors or less reliable electronics. The number of vehicles may remain large, but quality can become uneven. That matters in a drone-watched battlefield. A tank with weaker observation equipment may detect threats later. A vehicle with poor communications may coordinate less effectively with infantry. A platform rushed from storage may break down before reaching position. These problems do not always appear as losses on a map, but they shape how long an army can keep attacking. War spotting, therefore, turns local reports into a broader warning. Russia is not only losing vehicles in separate incidents, it is facing an equipment burden that reaches from the front to depots and repair plants. The next issue is whether Moscow can replace those losses fast enough, and whether the new force can keep the same quality. Russia's defense industry has not stopped working, and that point must stay clear. Moscow can still produce, repair, and restore conventional military equipment, including tanks, armored vehicles, artillery pieces, and missiles. This is one reason Russia remains able to keep pressure on the battlefield, even after heavy losses. A country with large factories, old storage bases, and a state-directed war economy does not run out of weapons overnight. The more serious issue is whether the equipment returning to combat has the same value as the equipment already lost. Production numbers can hide important differences. A newly built tank, a modernized tank, and an old vehicle pulled from reserve may all appear under the same general label. In practice, they can perform very differently. A newer platform may have better optics, improved armor, stronger communications, and more reliable fire control. A restored vehicle may still move and shoot, but it may depend on older parts, weaker sensors, or repairs made under wartime pressure. On paper, both may count as one tank. On the battlefield, they may not offer the same protection or awareness. Russia can reduce some losses by repairing damaged vehicles and returning Soviet-era platforms to service. This gives Moscow a way to keep formations supplied with armor, especially when quantity is urgently needed. Yet restoration takes time, workers, spare parts, transport capacity, and inspection. A vehicle in storage is not automatically a combat vehicle. It may need a new engine, rebuilt tracks, fresh wiring, repaired sights, added armor, and testing before it can be sent forward. Each step demands resources that are also needed for other weapons. The harder challenge is found inside the vehicle, not only around it. Steel hulls can be repaired more easily than advanced electronics. Modern sights, thermal cameras, secure radios, navigation systems, fire control units, precision components, and electronic warfare equipment are harder to replace at speed. These systems shape how well a crew sees, communicates, aims, and survives. If they are missing, damaged, or replaced by older alternatives, the vehicle may still enter the fight, but its real combat value can fall. This matters in an attrition war because Russia may be able to replace part of the visible quantity while losing part of the invisible quality. A tank count does not show whether crews have enough training, whether mechanics have enough parts, or whether a unit can coordinate with infantry and drones under pressure. It also does not show how many vehicles break down before reaching position, or how many need repeated repairs after short use. Moscow can still sustain production, but sustaining performance is a different test. The battle is no longer measured only by how many vehicles Russia can send back to the front. It is also measured by how reliable, modern, and useful those vehicles remain after repeated rounds of loss and repair. This gap between quantity and quality leads into a deeper problem. Many of Russia's current production limits reflect older weaknesses inside its defense industry. Russia's defense industry is under pressure from weaknesses that did not begin with recent battles in Ukraine. The war has exposed limits in production, supply chains, technology, modernization, and skilled labor built up over years. Russia must replace parts that once came from Western suppliers, search for alternative sources, and rely more on older stockpiles. Factories can keep working, but pressure forces choices between speed, quality, and complexity. A modern replacement with advanced electronics, reliable optics, and secure communications is harder to deliver quickly. Ukraine is trying to make that burden heavier. Reconnaissance drones, attack UAVs, and artillery target vehicles in combat, and the process that keeps Russian armor moving. Every tank hit near the front creates another problem behind the line. It may need recovery, spare parts, fuel, transport, mechanics, and time before it can return. That means a battlefield strike can quickly become a factory problem, a transport problem, and a manpower problem. Damaged equipment can become a second target. If Russian recovery vehicles, repair teams, supply trucks, or collection points are watched by Ukrainian drones, saving a damaged vehicle becomes dangerous. A tank that might have been repaired can become a permanent loss if it cannot be pulled back safely. A rescue mission can expose more vehicles and personnel to the same surveillance network. Drones are therefore becoming more than weapons used to destroy tanks. They are tools for attacking recovery, repair, and regeneration. It can also force commanders to choose between saving equipment and protecting the crews sent to recover it. The reported 18-tank operation therefore leads to a wider conclusion. Modern war is not decided only by who destroys more equipment. It is decided by who can keep combat power alive after repeated constant battlefield losses. If Ukraine's report about 18 Russian tanks is accurate, the operation points to more than a local success. It shows how armored forces now face danger before, during, and after combat. A route can be watched, a formation can be fixed, and a damaged vehicle can remain exposed when recovery teams arrive. Sloviansk widens that picture. Russia can still send tanks, artillery, drones, mechanized units, and support vehicles into the fight, but each part needs roads, fuel, ammunition, repair crews, and time. Those needs create targets. Open-source loss records show how separate strikes can build into a long equipment problem. Russia still has reserves and factories, but replacing a vehicle is not the same as restoring combat quality. The likely pattern is clear. Russia may keep pressing with numbers, while Ukraine tries to make every Russian vehicle harder to move, recover, repair, and return to the active front line. War is not only measured by the weapons destroyed, but also by the lives disrupted, the cities damaged, and the long peace that becomes harder to rebuild after every battle. Understanding how modern wars are fought helps us see why preventing them matters, because every new weapon changes not only the battlefield, but also the future of civilians far from the front line. If you want more clear and serious analysis about weapons, battles, and global security, subscribe to Military Force and keep following our next reports.